All right. All right, Tristan, Anjan, we're here. And as I was saying to Tristan, I have my blue blockers on, so I'm not LARPing on this one. And I've been out all afternoon with another Bitcoiner family. We've been wild river swimming, grounding under the sunshine, and yeah, having some good family, wholesome fun. So perfect day to do that before chatting with you guys.
Incredible. Proof of work right there.
Proof of work, yeah.
Now Lauren is on a lesson at the moment with her homeschooling, unschooling, self-directed education platform. So she might come down in around 45 minutes to an hour to completely interrupt the flow of the conversation and throw in like a complete out of left field question, or she might not. So that's the beauty of yeah, random podcasting. But getting you guys together has been a challenge because you guys so busy all over the place. What's been going on? Where have you been taken? I'm looking at your behind you there, Anjan, your whiteboard. It's like the meme of the guy, red strings everywhere. This is your life. What's going on?
Uh, I think I think it's we've worked on this for so long as an R&D project, 6 years from start to finish. To take doing a complex R&D project and then add an entire consumer company on top of it, that's then organizing in the physical world and then organizing the digital world. I think there's just a huge grow up period for us in the massive increase in scale. And so we've been running around meeting folks, doing demos. We sold out of the tablets. It's been a fever dream of sorts. And it's starting now that we've sold out, it's starting to come back to a level set. So we're catching our breath, and I'm glad we can start to go deeper with community.
Excellent. And we've got to get all of these stories and backstories and Bitcoin rabbit hole stories and daylight, UV light, blue light, anything else we want to talk about, completely open. So Tristan, why don't we get a few introductions done and out the way for those people that are listening and might not know, who we have on the call right now. What's your background and what were you doing in Bitcoin and how did you come to land this role at Daylight and meet Anjan?
Yeah, I mean, my background is electrical engineering, but then I've simultaneously been very interested in health optimization by suffering one too many concussions like 6-7 years ago, and then also Bitcoin and just decentralized living. So that culminated in me writing a book in 2021 called Bitcoin and Beef that talks about, the issues with our food system, financial system, healthcare systems, etc. Got on social media and then used my electrical engineering background to learn deeply about the electromagnetic aspects of biology and health, things like light, getting outside, whether it's beneficial, grounding, EMFs, etc. And yeah, had my own podcast, Decentralized Radio, had you on there. It's a great conversation. And had Anjan on there early January this year. And halfway through that conversation, I realized that Daylight Computer was be like above and beyond the most important company in the world to succeed. And I had this crazy background that fit perfectly into, wanting to join that mission. So immediately dropped everything I was doing to jump on board. And here we are. So now I'm head of marketing and, doing a few other things in the company. And it's been exhilarating. So what an opportunity. I didn't believe that a company like this could exist. I knew from an engineering perspective that, healthier technology devices were possible, but did not know that someone would have already been working on this for 5+ years. So it's incredible.
Anjan, take us back to what you were doing before you, fell down like the rabbit hole, whatever it was that, kind of turned you on or triggered you to understand that there was something pretty bleak about our tech.
I spent 2 years backpacking before I did this. I've actually I've never worked a proper job, but both the infamy of that and like the coolness of that. When I was backpacking, it was all going across Asia. It was in Russia, Mongolia, Burma, Indonesia. My goal was to go to places that no business trip or romantic partner would take me. And so I was trying to just understand what the reality of the human condition is in these different parts. I went to Stanford and I was told Silicon Valley is this paragon of optimization and innovation and brilliance and happiness. And that was not my on the ground experience. It was like McKinsey energy. It was like Goldman energy. It was all of finance and Wall Street now hiding under hoodies and Patagonia vests, knowing that this is the new core. And people were miserable, and it just what it's sold as and what it is did not line up. And so in my travels around the world, I was surprised and stunned by how much happier, how much more purpose, like random villagers in Vietnam or Russian babushka near Lake Baikal in Russia. Like it was kind of stunning for me to see the power of tradition, the power of religion, the power of family, of community, of basic principles of being in line with nature. And I couldn't help but contrast that with my relationship to technology. I spent a lot of that time while traveling reading, and I'd stay up super late. I'd have 400 tabs open on my computer. Uh, my sleep was screwed. My eyes hurt like crazy. I was so distracted. Um, I'd be in beautiful places and I'd be stuck inside, trying to read on this. And so that contrast was so strong. It really made me realize, what the heck is this? What is this? Like, why is the technology I'm using shaping my life, shaping how I spend my time, shaping my physical health, shaping my mental health? This is supposed to be a tool, but I'm the servant. And so just hitting personal cracking points in that, just too many nights in a row of screwed up sleep and being tired. And I could feel the impact to my mental health. I got very depressed too. I have seasonal affective disorder, so it compounds even further. My vitamin D levels were tanked. And so kind of out of desperation, I didn't intend to start a company. I just was like, okay, what's like the best way to relate to the digital world or computing that's healthier? And from kind of summer of 2018 until the beginning of 2019, I just tried every single possible way to do this. I bought fast printers, I bought scanners. I would literally print out every email and things that I needed to read. I would write on them, I would scan them back. That didn't really work. And, you waste so much paper. I bought every e-ink device under the sun. I tried to take an iPad and make it, I just try. All I did, it was not like, let me invent something. It was like, how do I create a computer that's better for me? And at the end of it, I slipped into a stream of, none of this is working. Okay, what does it look like to actually build it myself? And so out of personal desperation, that's how it all kind of started.
And what were you studying at Stanford then?
I designed my own degree. So the paper on the wall says electrical engineering, but essentially it was a combination of bioengineering, mechanical engineering, computer science, even psychology. If you want to be bold with your degree and be unemployed, so be it. Was their kind of their calculus, and I was like, I'll take you up on that. My passion was medical technology. I come from a family of doctors, and I didn't want to be a doctor. I don't have the patience for it. Med school, residency, blah blah blah. But I wanted to have. It felt like a great way to have an impact that was also super interesting. Like I loved the diversity. If you need to do medical things, you need to understand chemistry, you understand physiology, you need to understand psychology, you need to understand mechanical interventions, electrical interventions. And so I love that for my brain, just being able to go full stack. And so that's what most of my studies was around. How do I be really good at inventing medical technologies? And almost all of my projects there failed. Sleep apnea, back pain, stroke, trying to create an artificial pancreas and things like that. They all just failed. The reality is the process of FDA trials or insurance reimbursement or being able to get through the regulatory apparatus is so, so difficult, and it so determines what the idea is. You don't start backwards from the patient. You start from, okay, what will get me an FDA clearance? And then you end up making some tiny little thing that then doesn't really matter, but gets sold to Medtronic or Stryker. And so that was very disorienting. I was disillusioned by that, both by Silicon Valley and then what the reality of trying to have an impact in medical or health tech was. So kind of, even though Daylight was just focused on solving my own problems with computers, making them less distracting them, making them healthier, making them actually productive in the ways that I wanted to be, which was to get smarter and learn and read and think. It was fascinating to kind of see, oh, wait, Daylight is my way of having an impact on health at scale without the entire process of the regulatory bodies and the insurance reimbursement and FDA and all that. And so it was kind of fascinating to see how that come to be, because I was looking for big ideas and trying to do it. And the idea I ended up working on was just something I wanted.
So how old were you guys when like the Elizabeth Holmes thing blew up? And what were you thinking? Because clearly you must have been pretty close to this, you know, being on that. Yeah, go ahead. I can see you already smiling and nodding.
Well, one of my professors was Elizabeth Holmes's professor. So I kind of knew that Theranos was a scam from 2013. So that was fascinating, being right in the middle of that. And
was the professor saying that, like, what's going on with Theranos is a scam? Or were you guys just looking at this with a side eye thinking, this is nuts? Like, how is an ex-student of it?
It was a bunch of points together. So one was like at the career fair, when you would go and interview at Theranos, they would give you like a wood block puzzle and ask you to do it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but like, what do you do? And they would say nothing about what they did. And so they would act really strange. They would act really strange and really coy. And then one of the people in my freshman dorm interned there and was like, dude, they are just using normal machines. Like, that's what my intern role was to prepare normal machines to be able to process these. And the professor was like, yeah, none of the ideas that Elizabeth had actually make sense. Like flow cytometry, microfluidics, none of that stuff is advanced enough to be able to do it. We're still trying to do it in the lab. And then she's saying she's commercialized it. How is she that much more ahead of the entire field? So there are all these little hints like that.
Man, that's wild. Wow. Okay.
So when the world found out, what, like 2015, 2016, it's amazing that the world did find out, but it was years and years after it felt like all of us on the ground kind of knew.
And with the FDA, like, just passing her, no problem, go ahead, make the thing?
I think there's a strong, like, fake it till you make it thing, which is the FDA is looking at. Actually, honestly, if you read any of the stories, yeah, they took a bunch of loopholes to get around it.
Shocking fiat behavior as usual. So where did Bitcoin kind of come into your stories for both of you? And once we've got those little rabbit hole stories out of the way, we'll dig right into Daylight and, you know, what you've managed to produce.
I got into it pretty early. My house was covered in Austrian economics books like Rothbard and Mises and Hayek and so on. And my dad was super into it. And so that was the influence for me, was from the Austrian perspective. And so that was in 2012. I bought my first Bitcoin and sold it for a loss. And so I had a narrative at the time that I would get like over enthusiastic or eager about something. And then I thought I had done something similar where it's like, okay, how is this going to be an application of the monetary principles that I'm now pretty fascinated by? I'm dumb. And so I kind of like, kind of sheepishly lost faith in the thing for quite some time, because I was like, this is scary and confusing, and it's not what I think it is. So it wasn't until 2016, 2017, I started to then come back into it. And I think the core thing for me is just in my travels and explorations of the world, seeing how difficult it is for people to coordinate, for people to agree. Just the enormous absolute difficulty it is to get people to coordinate and to get people to agree. We take it for granted how difficult that is. And you combine that with the second principle, which is most adults are not adults. Most of society is not actually grown up. And so people fiddle with things. People aren't responsible. People aren't always thinking long term. And so the idea that the people in charge or the adults will be responsible, quickly realize it's not true and it's not sustainable. So those two things coming together, Bitcoin as a way of getting a bunch of people to agree what money is, and as a way to not have meddle, the ability to meddle with it. That's really what clicked for me. Oh wow, this is really special.
Mm-hmm. Tristan?
Yeah, for me, I had some early touch points, like bought a fake ID with Bitcoin in 2015. I remember I was like, wow, that was so easy, because I'd used Western Union or some garbage in the past, even though, it's a very expensive fake ID. And then, 2017, kind of last few years of being at tech school, like heard about it, kind of went down the altcoin, shitcoin rabbit hole for a couple of years. But then really when I lost my health from too many concussions, is when I took the just decentralization rabbit hole of, wow, like when I'm not in the driver's seat of my life and I'm outsourcing, these things to doctors or, obviously finances, the government entities that kind of rule society, the quality is going downhill. So 2018, 2019, and then leading into 2020, with the macro COVID situation, I was primed really hard. So it was actually the decentralized health angle that made me, pretty much like a maxi in 19 and 20. And then since then, just it all aligns. And kind of like once you look through this world from a decentralized lens, it all kind of comes to fruition, from the low time preference to just the value set that Bitcoin brings, that you can't cheat nature, you can't cheat anything. You need work to be put in. And, that's why at Daylight, it's our kind of like company value set as well, is proof of work, because you can get around that. And if you try to, eventually, like, that'll catch up to you. And then of course, just in general, the culture that it brings with it, and kind of the movement that we're seeing across the board, it's cool to see Bitcoiners kind of dive more into the health piece and the opposite way. And then really just the convergence of all of these movements that is all about, sovereignty at the individual level. And, we talk about that a lot, and it's exciting that, we have the platform to be able to bring it potentially to a lot more people.
What was causing the concussions, if you don't mind me asking?
Soccer, football, most of them. And then the last one was kind of a one-off, but it was the recovery process. Like, when you get a concussion, the immediate 2 weeks after is like critical. And I did like everything wrong in those 2 to 4 weeks. Because I didn't know that I was concussed. I like hit my head when I was passed out. And then, it was like Christmas break, and I was playing sports, skiing, drinking, like the whole thing. And had like headaches, symptoms every day for over a year. And, went from being like a college athlete, engineering student, to not being able to do anything. So just that entire switch of not being able to do what I wanted to, not being in the driver's seat, being super limited, just changed my entire perspective. And now I want to be in control of like everything, pretty much, or at least as best as I can. I'm happy to outsource like an oil change or doing my floors, but
Man, right. Okay. Well, are you back to full health now?
So the journey is cool. Let's say it's 6 years. I say it took like 4 years to get back to like where I was like pre-injury, or roughly the same. And then the past 2 years have just like hit a new level. And what I found anecdotally ties into obviously what we're going to talk about, and Daylight's, mantra as well, is the more time I spend outside, the more time I'm connected to nature, the better I feel. And that just like compounded over the years. And then, you know, the past 2 years, I dove into the research as to why that's the case. And it's really simple. The science is super complex, but the takeaways are, you know, pretty easy to digest, which is great.
All right, now let's get into all of this good stuff, because I love me some bro science. And I know there's a lot of people out on Bitcoin Twitter that also love them some bro science, because to me, it's the best kind of science, because you're learning from people that have actually done the thing, right? And in most cases, out of necessity. In your case, it was necessity. You had to overcome some injuries, some concussion. It could be all kinds of different reasons. And the different diets out there that people are talking about. Big shout out to Max DeMarco. You know, that motherfucker's got people sleeping on the floor and not smiling and like, all this kind of random stuff. But it's so fun to see the change in people, and to try it for yourself if you're willing and game to do it, rather than just blase brush it over. You know, whatever are these guys talking about? You know, frequencies and organites and EMFs and blue lights and crystals and all this kind of stuff. I'm falling in these rabbit holes. And Jack Cruz, shout out to Uncle Jack. It was him that like unlocked me to start looking up at the sky closer and take more note of what's going on with the shit that's being sprayed in our skies, and you know, and trying to figure out, all right, what is it? Why are they doing it? Who are they? How are they? And but you know, most people are just, what are you talking about? This is complete and utter crazy nonsense. But Jack helped me like figure it all together. It's like, right, this all goes back to light. And if you can manipulate light and you can manipulate frequencies, which you can through the 5G towers and whatever else, and 5G lampposts now going up all around some of these cities, you can be in control. This is societal conditioning. It's eugenics, for want of a better word. And our laptops do the same, and our phones do the same. So all kinds of rabbit holes we can go down here. Pick whatever one you want, Tristan. You can kick us off. Actually, let's start with you. Grounding. And you know, please explain to people that this isn't just bro science. This is an actual thing, and you know, please help them come to understand what's going on.
And Tristan, before you go, if you don't mind me interjecting with a slight frame, I think what's fascinating here is why there is so much overlap between people who are into Bitcoin and people who are into kind of decentralized health. I think one way to slice it is these are folks who are questioning the status quo, questioning authority, and they're doing it in every area of their life. I think that explains some of it. I think the other thing is actually it's all being united by the same set of principles, which is what has proof of work, what has actual empiricism, what has stood the test of time. And what we're talking about here in terms of the different health kind of the health kind of frameworks is the same as what we're talking about with Bitcoin. It's about coming back from nature. It's about energy. It's about relation to those things that are invariant, whether it be 21 or whether it be the sun. And so the fact that all we're trying to do is take the same set of principles, kind of nature inspired, and apply them in different areas of our life, I think that's the core of what this is. Otherwise, it just kind of feels like it's different things. No, it's the same set of principles. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it's a return to reality is what we like to say at Daylight as well. And then Bitcoin has an interface with reality through, you know, that just the mining network, right? Like that proof of work is rooted in reality. It's rooted in electromagnetism. And that's what I like to start is like any of these conversations you mentioned, light, EMFs, grounding, whatever. We need to first understand that this planet is electromagnetic and that our biology is electromagnetic at like the most foundational level. And, you know, how do you convince the average person that? Well, you'd be like, how do you measure your heart activity, your brain activity? Electrocardiogram, electroencephalogram. How do you measure, you know, a tumor or a torn ACL? a magnetic resonance imaging machine or an MRI, and they're using magnetic fields and radio frequencies in there. So it's like starting to say some of these things, and you can go down even more obscure rabbit holes saying that we have like 1 million magnetite crystals in our brains, and other animals like birds and whales and migratory species have far more. But that makes sense. Why? Because the Earth has a natural geomagnetic field from the molten iron core, and that is affecting how life on this planet is interacting. And now we have all these artificial electromagnetic inputs that are very new to our biology, whether it's the visible component of them, the light, or the invisible, which is everything else, the power and the radio frequencies. But something like grounding is so rooted in like what it means to be human and what it means to kind of be connected to our environment. And the Earth naturally has this negative surface charge because of lightning strikes and the electric field that is naturally coming as a result of that. And we are naturally, like I said, electromagnetic beings, and we need to have this net negative charge for our biology to function properly. So when we step on the surface of the Earth, we're able to absorb free electrons in what most people would consider like a very low amount of current. Like it's in the nanoamps, the 10 to the negative ninth range. But this is still like trillions of electrons over a few seconds, because that's just the scale of electricity and electron flow. And we're able to do so. We have a more conductive surface on our hands and our feet, and those electrons are very useful because that's what our biology is running off of at the lowest level. And people are very familiar with antioxidants and why that might be good for our health. All antioxidants are molecules that can donate electrons to quench free radicals or reactive oxygen species. So you can think of it as a very simple way. As being connected to the Earth, you're absorbing electrons, which is a very small amount of electrical current. That's very useful to have a net negative charge in the body for everything from your cardiovascular system to kind of just the low level source of oxidative stress, and it can act as an antioxidant. And this is not like woo woo. People like Nobel laureate Richard Feynman have been talking about this since the 60s, and they no longer teach this. They no longer teach you that the Earth is negatively charged, that there's a magnetic field, electric field of the Earth, and that we have kind of been tapping into this for a long time in human existence. So it's a quote unquote health benefit, but in reality, it should just be baseline input. It's a benefit because we're never connected to the Earth. But for a long time, for the majority of human existence, that was just what was normal.
So am I right in believing or thinking like the electrical the EMFs, the electromagnetic frequencies that are pulsed out either from radio towers, cell phone towers, laptops, Wi-Fi routers, smart toasters, smart meters, smart whatever the fuck, like the internet of things has got people believing that they need in their life. Are they pumping out positively charged radio waves or frequencies?
No, that's not. So all electromagnetic waves, they're just photons. So they don't contain electrons or protons. So there's a different thing completely, but they interact with our biology in a way that's unnatural, because there is not really a level of radio frequencies that we're designed to be exposed to. There's a tiny amount that makes it through our atmosphere. Some scientists have been quoted as saying, like, if you put one cell phone on the moon, it would exceed all of the natural radio frequencies that makes it to the surface of the Earth. So this is just really foreign, and our biology has a negative repercussion to being exposed to these radio frequencies. It's stressful. It's noise on the line. So you're lowering the kind of the signal to noise ratio and inducing a lot of stress. And again, as electromagnetic beings and as engineers, we think about things like systems. So you want to align the input signals to optimize the output, and we're just in a swath of the wrong input signals, and it's diluting the right ones.
So Anjan, for somebody that's listening, that is a heavy user of a laptop, a phone, an iPad, which we all are. I mean, these days, I mean, my goodness, like a lot of people, this is how we work all day long in an office. And then you get home and you'll be watching television, or you've got your wireless earbud things in. Please, listeners, take those things out. I can't believe people still use them. But what would be the signs, do you think, that people should be looking for with regards to like waning health?
I think the tricky part of this is for a large percentage of the people, they have worn the lead backpack for so long, they forgot they're wearing a lead backpack. And so in a way, the waning health almost is only noticed when you get off of it. And then you're like, wait, what? It's like you put blue blockers on and you're asleep by 11 p.m. And normally you're staying up until 1 a.m. You wouldn't have even noticed that you're that tired at 11 p.m. You wouldn't have noticed that throughout the day, like how fatigued you are, until you get your circadian rhythm in place. And so I think what's fascinating is our medical system is great at acute health, but all these kind of like chronic accumulations, which to show up as tiredness, as difficulty with maintaining consistent sleep cycles, sleeping well, energy, mood, inflammation. There's a great line me and Tristan often quote, which is, when chaos accumulates in the body, we call that inflammation. And chaos accumulates often from a lack of coordination. And what is the cause of that lack of coordination? It's from the different clocks in your body being desynchronized. Why? Because you have artificial indications like blue light and things like that cause your suprachiasmatic nucleus to say things that are different than the rest of your body clocks. Suddenly, growth hormone, insulin, glucagon, the whole hormonal cascades are all out of sync. And how does that show up? Your body is stressing and straining to try to make it work. And that's inflammation. That shows up even as anxiety. And so I think a lot of the chronic things that we often face in modern society can be linked to these subtle desynchronizations of circadian rhythms and the impacts on metabolic health and so on.
So what's the blue light doing? Why is it so damaging to us, and why do computer makers still use it if that they must have the information?
Well, I don't think they really do. That's the problem, is if you actually look at the domain of the people who make computers, it's all focused on supply chain and it's all focused on end user application. Does it work for Candy Crush? Does it work for Netflix? If you're actually in the industry, you realize how little there is that's actually looking at long-term research to humans. Like, you look at the literature for a lot of these things and it's paltry. Almost all of the best evidence is coming from other countries or from people kind of figuring it out for themselves. There is a complete lack of integration of mental health, physical health in the technology industry. If they're doing it, it's because somebody else from the outside is forcing them to do it. And I think that's the problem here is, yeah, it looks fine. I talked to Fred Kahn, one of the inventors of the LCD display. And he told me, he's like, I would have had no clue that people would have used this thing for more than 2 hours. And I would have never guessed that 5-year-olds would be using it for hours. Like, this was not even part of the trajectory at all. And so here's an industry that for 40 years has moved in this direction. And now we're learning the science of what its impacts are. And it's tricky now get out of it. Why? Because a blue light computer is a great lowest common denominator computer. It can be used The same screen technology can be used for TVs. It can be used for phones. It can be used for laptops. So now their life gets harder if they can't be able to use it, because every white LED that's being used is ultimately a blue LED underneath. And that's where the blue light's coming in. The way they're making the color white is by using a blue LED. And that's the core sin of it. And so the whole edifice of modern screens and computing actually depends on a white LED and a blue LED. And so you'd have to remove the thing that everything else is built on top of if you wanted to change that. And so that's why there's not really too much change from the mainstream about it. They have no incentive. They want to sell one iPad to everybody and get away with it. And to answer your other question of how blue light affects us or is bad for us, there's layers to it. We're like discovering actually there's a lot of ways it affects us, but the simplest way to describe it is blue light gets scattered in the morning and it gets scattered in the evening. And so the time in which in the natural world you're actually getting the most amount of frequencies of blue light is kind of the midday. And so your body is expecting that if it's receiving blue light, it is in the middle of the day. And then there's a certain amount of regulatory processes that occur around insulin, around dopamine, around stimulus that then are like, okay, I am at this time. And in the natural world, campfires, sunsets, you don't get blue light at nighttime. So then when you do get blue light from computer screens at 8 or 9 p.m., it's extremely confusing because that has been a durable signal through all of natural history that it's 1 p.m. So there's no second guessing. There is no body going, we're not sure blue light may do this. No, it's blue light means this. And so that's where your circadian rhythms, your clocks are being totally screwed with and then desynchronizing versus the different clock. Almost all of your key organ systems have a different clock. And that desynchronization is the cause of a lot of the issues.
So what's going on in the actual screen then with the blue light? I think I heard you throw out a statistic on another podcast about how it's flickering in the background.
Tristan, do you want to take it?
Yeah, sorry, my computer's like overheating a tiny bit here in my hot house. But yeah, what's going on with flicker? That's like an underrated one. I think people are unaware that LEDs are designed to pulse as well. Actually, all light, really, even radio frequencies you mentioned earlier, Daniel, they're all like pulsing through a control mechanism called pulse width modulation. And for LEDs, it's really important when you're adjusting the brightness, and it's kind of just become a design standard. And this is a problem because it's very unnatural. So light that comes from the sun is continuous. It's not pulsing. So this is another stressor for our biology, our eyes, our brain. And it's simple. If you take like a slow motion video of your phone screen, you can see like a common iPhone might be flickering at 400 hertz. So that means like 400 times a second, it is oscillating, adjusting in the amplitude of the output power, the brightness of the LED itself. And we can't visually see that, but it's very stressful. And you can go right and Google like health effects, side effects of flicker. And even the Institute of Electronic and Electrical Engineers, the IEEE, agrees that it causes eye strain, it causes migraines, it aggravates symptoms in autistic children, which is a massive, area where we think we can have a major impact. It can bring on anxiety, and then obviously it could cause potential like photoepileptic episodes. So flicker is something that if you block blue light with glasses, red light screen filter, iris, f-lux, etc., you're not gonna do anything to improve the flicker of the screen or to eliminate it completely. It's really a hardware design change, and that's something we did on our backlight, which is really cool. And then I want to go back to kind of the blue light as well. It's like the way I think about it is it's just the main reason or the main way our body's telling time. And Anjan beautifully put, like when we're not synchronized, like there's going to be chaos. And the reason why the context matters so much is that all we're trying to do is, or all we need to do, is emulate nature. And in nature, blue light is, well, it's not flickered, and then it's not by itself. It's not in isolation. So every time you get blue, you get red. Well, you get yellow, green, orange, red, and then infrared. And these are much more healing, low energy wavelengths. And blue, violet, ultraviolet are very, high energy wavelengths that have very specific effects and are very important for our biology, but they're a lot. And that's what's wrong with academia and a lot of the research out there on blue light, ultraviolet. You have to look into the details of the studies, because a lot of them are done in isolation, where they just take like one wavelength and they shine it like, on a petri dish on cells, and then they measure the outcome. Like that's cool, but that's not what is happening in real life. That's not what is happening when you go outside in the sun. You're getting the full spectrum of light. So for us, we think one, if not the main benefit, is just the ability to use daylight outside, because then your light environment is exactly what it should be.
And what about light bulbs then? Because if it gets dark in the wintertime in Northern Europe by 4-5 o'clock, and then people put on the lights, and that's doing the same thing, I'm assuming, with tricking your brain into thinking it's midday.
Yeah. Indoor lighting and screens are the two sources of artificial light that are completely giving us the wrong input signals. So there's been a massive shift. So Anjan mentioned LEDs, right? If you actually look at the history of the blue LED being invented, the main reason that was such a big race and push was so that they could get white. And then once they got a white LED, they could use it to replace all indoor lighting, basically, because it's more efficient. What were we using before then? We're using incandescents, which have been recently banned. If you look at a light spectrum of an incandescent bulb, it has a very small amount of visible light, very low amount of blue, tiny bit of green, more and more yellow, orange, red, and then a lot of infrared, which is basically heat. So that's more beneficial to our biology than an LED that has a lot of blue and a lot of visible and then no infrared. Because if you look at sunlight, it's about 50-55% infrared light. So those ratios do matter. And the incandescents we've had since, Edison turned on the lights, they were harmful in terms of disrupting our biology, but they weren't nearly as bad as compact fluorescents, which have an extremely alien light spectrum, or now like modern, cool, or even warm LEDs that are being used. So, and then it's not a coincidence, perhaps, or it just happens to be an inconvenient truth that, they've now banned incandescents. So that's kind of the state of indoor lighting.
Why did they ban them? What was the rationale?
Well, they banned them for energy efficiency, and that's being bad for, the climate, right? It's the climate change narrative.
So it's the whole climate grift. Yeah.
It is true. Like they are very inefficient if you look at like how well they produce visible light. But what people don't realize is, like if it's, January in Wyoming or the UK, like that heat is not actually being wasted. Number one, it's beneficial for our biology. Near infrared and far infrared light, mostly near coming from the incandescent bulb, is really important for our biology, really important for mitochondrial health, and it gets deep into our bodies. And then it can heat your house a tiny bit as well. So yes, it is expensive, and it doesn't make sense maybe to have incandescent bulbs on in the summer, but you don't even need that much light in the summer because you have way more light for longer periods of time of the day, especially at northern latitudes. But that's kind of the, what's happened. And glass is the same thing. Like glass is now all this low emissivity, which means it blocks even more infrared from getting in. So it's blocking a greater portion of the spectrum of light coming from the sun, which is more problematic. So I'm really encouraged that I know personally a couple of people, and just there's been more kind of innovation on the indoor lighting side as well. So if you combine our efforts on the screens and, you know, some progress that's going on, if we can change indoor lighting and screens, like we can change the entire lighting environment for the better.
So Anjan, someone listening to this that's thinking, fuck, I sit in an office all day. I'm looking at a computer screen like all day, a basic office computer screen as well. Like, you know, it's not going to have any kind of, it would, you know, it would just be office supplies. Under office supplies, blue lighting, strip lighting, 8-10 hours a day. What can they do? Because, you know, it's not practical for them to go outside. Sure, they can order a device, daylight device, for when they're, you know, using that at the weekends or in their leisure time. But are there any other things that they can do right now to try and, you know, cut some of this stuff out?
I mean, that's where in the long term, we want to have a lot of different surface areas we can improve. Like we want to come up with our technology, a monitor. So an office worker at least can have that with their existing Windows computer. Because we're actually making our own LEDs to be able to make them blue light free and flicker free and so on. We think it could always be interesting for us to also make circadian friendly lighting. And in terms of what people can do today, that's a tricky one with the office environment. Wearing blue blockers is obviously one thing that can help a lot.
Being able to spot a Bitcoiner in an office environment, right? See the guy over there, the one guy on the whole open plan floor wearing those blue blockers, looks like an idiot. There, he is the Bitcoin guy.
I think that's actually maybe one of the ways we make this through is like, if you see Rick Rubin, he uses blue blockers, and it's almost becoming like a cool status symbol of sorts. Like, you know, in the past, you wear sunglasses inside if you're cool, then you're kind of a douchebag. And now it's like, okay, if you're wearing blue blockers, that's cool. I think that's how social change happens. But you don't have too many options. Wearing blue blockers, kind of looking outside to increase the focal length so your eyes get a chance to look at faraway objects.
What about the house? Can we change light bulbs in the house? I think there are some available online somewhere. Matthias Kutscher, he sent me a link because he went down the Jack Cruz rabbit hole after listening to a lot of podcasts and like flipped out about the light and changed all the lights in his house. So I need to follow up with him. There must be more than just one of these companies out there that are trying to address this for the home environment.
Yeah, there's a couple brands now starting to come out. You won't believe it, but it's only in the last couple of years. Starting to come out with trying to make flicker free or circadian friendly light spectrums for the light bulbs.
And what I noticed, I don't know if it's happening around all of the different European cities, but certainly in the UK, I remember growing up, like the lampposts in the town that lined the roads, they would always be amber, orange. And they wouldn't be that bright, but they'd be bright enough to light at least the pathway and make sure if you're walking around at nighttime that you can be seen or you can see others. But now, my God, like they're replacing them with these LED 5G enabled, because they've got the little things on the top as well. So they're pumping out 5G microwaves at the same time as blinding people with flickering blue light. This cannot be a good way to go. And this is classic malinvestment, like fiat incentive, climate grifting, all at work at the same time, which is doing us, the citizen, damage whilst using the taxpayer money to put these things in place to, you know, save the environment.
There's a great video of a classroom, an experiment by John Ott, where he shows how hyperactive ADHD kids are under normal fluorescent lighting and things like that. And then they change the lighting environment, and then People are a lot less anxious and hyperstimulated, less ADHD. And so it's like, wow, across society, in the name of progress, what are all the dubious effects that have been happening? Impacts of light. People inside. Flickering.
Then, oh man, it's also connected, right? Every single time it's connected. If you just follow the money and follow the incentives.
And that was in the 70s, John Ott. So I highly recommend people go and read Health and Light. We actually put it on the Daylights as like a standard PDF to read. And a more recent researcher is Scott Zimmerman, and he has like a very small light bulb company that is both, it's like a combination if you took an LED plus an incandescent, and like barely meets the Department of Energy's like standards. So he talks about it in a really great way as a more modern source. But yeah, it's crazy, Daniel, that like these things are being talked about, EMFs as well, like in the 60s, in the early 70s, and then when we went fully fiat for, you know, the 80s, 90s, and then most of the 2000s, right? Like just all got swept under the rug. And but it's sad, but now it's cool that we have this opportunity to really bring this to, you know, a lot of people in terms of knowledge. But don't take our word for it. Like there is a lot of research out there. There's a lot of, you know, just easy ways to verify what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's shocking that they knew that this was happening in the 70s, and yet we still have, you know, classrooms, kids under these conditions. And no wonder, like if it's linked to ADHD, you know, you see the people like theorize on Twitter. Sometimes they show you the graph of ADHD, you know, it's up and to the right all the way. Oh, what's happened? You know, could it be this? Could it be that? Well, here's another reason. But of course, we know that if there is a high, you can prescribe medicine for that. So it's in somebody's interest, of course, as always, to be able to be making, you know, money from these symptoms that the kids. But it could be fixed so quickly. Just making a few changes. I mean, it might not fix everything, but it's got to affect kids positively to not be exposed to strip. It. All right, I'm getting triggered. All right, so.
Well, we should talk about kids a little bit, because for us, this is like our main passion
Right.
as well. And it's where we think we could have the biggest impact, especially for the tablet form factor. And, you know, I'll let Anjan chime in as well. But I want to start with saying that kids are far, far more sensitive to these alien electromagnetic inputs, right? They have developing biology. They have smaller body sizes, so they ergonomically hold devices closer. They have smaller, you know, skulls. They have thinner skulls. They have higher water content, which is where a lot of these waves are interacting with them. And, you know, we're giving them devices at a younger and younger age. And now one-to-one learning is the norm with devices. And I think a lot, maybe not most, but maybe most parents know that screen time is bad, or there's a negative outcome from the screen time. The kids are throwing a tantrum. They can see it's addicting. They don't know why, and they don't have an alternative. And that's really sad, but it's exciting for us as an opportunity to finally offer something that is less invasive to their biology, can be used outside, and then is just not addicting. And we see these rising rates of ADHD, autism as well, and mentioned that earlier. And this is something that I think is the most important mission, is really how can we set up the next generation to actually take advantage of having the universe's knowledge at their fingertips, instead of setting them up for failure, mental health issues, and, you know, scrolling on TikTok all day long, 10 years old.
I mean, I have 4 kids. It is a constant daily battle to have them, you know, that I cannot begin to tell you how many times a day I tell them, put it down, walk away from it. What are you doing laying on your bed looking at that? Get to the desktop, put it on a table, sit at a table, work at it if you need to. Otherwise, get away from it. But they don't listen. And like you say, it will cause grief within the family. Sorry, I'm trying to get a mosquito. Got it. Yeah, tantrums. If you take it away, which you forcibly have to sometimes, sometimes you just got a parent and off, away, hidden for a week. And my goodness, you have the absolute biggest meltdown because they don't understand what's going on. They don't understand how they're being programmed and controlled by this device. And I have this conversation constantly with my kids. I'm sure every parent does out there. So yeah, you are going to offer an alternative. And I think we'll certainly be first in line to try these things out and put some in the kids' hands. So yeah, let's talk about it. What is it? What have you designed? What have you sold out of? And what is the runway for the company and the vision of other devices to follow in the footsteps?
The vision was simply, can you reinvent computers to be healthier and actually good for you? And nothing that a computer does, no fancy feature, no, oh, it's got 8K pixels, it's got this, none of that matters if you don't have health and you don't have it actually, you're wisely spending your time. And so there's a long vision here of how to make computers healthier. And then the first place to start was with the light. We want to make a computer that removes junk light, it gets rid of blue light and flicker, and makes it possible to spend more time in natural light. You can be able to use it outdoors. And it felt like if you could do that, you could redeem actually the substrate of a computer to be something that's a little bit safer and healthier. And then over time, each of the other layers of a computer, be it the EMFs, be it the ergonomics, be it the materials being used, how do you start to make each of those systematically healthier? And so that's kind of what the vision we have is there's all, technology has not thought about this at all. It's all been about supply chain. It's all about user products. Now that we have the wisdom around health, how do we actually rethink a computer with that? And then health also is at the cognitive level. How do you get rid of all these addictions and temptations and distractions and interruptions? Is there a way to carve out particularly beneficial aspects of computing and pull it away from all the predatory aspects of computing? Because heck, back in the day when people bought their kid like a Mac, an early Mac, it's not like you were worried that the computer was going to be bad for them. Like, what could they do on it? They could go on Paint, they could type, like they could program. Like back then, you could only do kind of creative, productive things for the most part with a computer. It's like now with the attention economy and these trillion-dollar companies who make money off of stealing your time, it's operating systems that are built around notifications and stimulation and keeping you engaged. That can't be the foundation or fundamentals for to give somebody like the main interface for their life. A computer is your most important non-human relationship. And so what we built is the world's first blue light free computer screen. We took us 6 years to invent the technology. And it's also got an optional amber backlight, no blue at all, that's flicker free. So during the day outside, you can use it with zero light at all. And then at nighttime, you can use it with flicker-free orange light. That's blue light free. And then what we're doing is on top of that, we're creating a distraction-free, kind of locked down operating system that just, you can think, you can read, you can write, you can kind of do the good stuff of computing with some modes for different folks.
So right now it kind of looks like an iPad, right? It's a tablet that you've created. But if it's the screen that you've designed, then there's no stopping you do laptops. There's no stopping you do phones, or even becoming a provider to other companies, like bigger companies that want to use your technology. Is that the idea?
Yeah, and so that's the idea of the roadmap: is start with the tablet, but then make a phone, make a monitor, make a laptop. Go through each of the core categories and see if you can make them healthier, both at the software and hardware level, but with the screen as, of course, the core innovation.
Television as well?
Yeah, we could do that as well. Yeah, we can go up to 120 inches.
Huh. All right, Tristan, I think you held one up there. So for those watching on YouTube, if we just flick over, if you make a sound so that you steal the camera,
Oh yeah, sorry.
there you go.
I'll turn it on too.
Very cool.
So that's not producing any light at all.
Yeah, this is just reflecting the light here from my big window. So.
And what size is that?
This is 10.5-inch diagonal screen.
Man, you're onto something huge here. Huge. Who's come knocking? Who? I know you have some investors, but have you? I mean, have Apple come and ask you what's going on with this? I mean, this is mad.
They're trying.
They're trying to get in touch, or they're trying to recreate what you guys have made in house.
No. I mean, people are just interested. They don't know what we've done. So it's cool because, you know, we always get this question, like, is anyone could just go and do this, right? If they have enough money, but maybe they could. It would take them a while, you know, 2-3 years at least, but they have actually no incentive to do so. And as Bitcoiners who know everything is about incentives, like they sell 75 million iPads a year. They have, I think, like almost 50% of the tablet market. And every single one of those is designed around hyperstimulation and bright colors and the best new processor. And say 1 million of those, they could sell 5 million more if they cared about, you know, if it was healthier or it was more sovereign. It's nothing. So sure, everyone's going to be interested. All the big companies will want to know what we're doing, but they don't have any incentive to change. So it's kind of a great opportunity. It's really a perfect storm for us to actually make it to the market, to become like a mainstay in the space and carve out just the fact that people can choose to have a better alternative. There's always going to be trade-offs, right? I mean, there's no color, but that's by design.
Yeah, of course. Anjan, what can you share with regards to people that have, you know, invested in the company and how much? Or I'm sure there are non-disclosure agreements in there somewhere. So whatever you can share with the plebs, I think they'd be interested to know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken a lot of time, effort, and money to be able to get this to market. No one believed that this was possible. So for the first couple of years, I just spent my entire life savings on this. I've said this elsewhere, but yeah, essentially I went bankrupt. And what finally kept us going was somebody gave us a Bitcoin. That's actually how we paid salaries for a bit of time until we got our first angel investors. So a Bitcoiner rescued us, which is fascinating to have all of Silicon Valley. You know, I went to Stanford, all of that network, and it was ultimately somebody from Bitcoin that made this work.
So what, like, all the VCs that you were like showing this to were just not interested, weren't getting it, didn't understand it?
Not at all. Because they're like, wait, so what you're doing is you're making a computer not addicting. You're making a computer not stimulating. That like what? And that's the fascinating thing here. What makes this valuable for parents? What makes this valuable for you? Which is like, yeah, there is power to the digital world. I mean, that's why we believe in Bitcoin. That's a digital invention. But of course, this has to be done in a way that's reasonable, that's safe, that's sustainable, that's not predatory. But that's their entire business model. Their entire business model is how addicting this is. And so to your point of like, well, what does Apple think of this or any of these folks? to them, this is the exact opposite of what they're trying to do. You're coming out and saying, I'm not going to pander to people. It's not about bright colors. We're going to give them something that is the least amount of computer they need to be able to do computery stuff, but nothing more. And their whole point is, well, our devices are impressive and special and fancy, and that's why you should buy it. We're like saying the opposite. But we have no institutional venture capital money. All the money we raised after I finally started to get some angel investment. So we raised a bit over $10 million, all from angel investors. And the main motivation behind most of these investors is this is the computer they want for their kids. They like currently Silicon Valley's main vision for the future of computing is VR. Even more computer on your face, even more blue light, melting your brain. That's where it's going. Whether you want it or not, Mark Zuckerberg is taking it there and the rest are following. And so I think people were excited by us as a potential alternative. If VR is maximalist computing and maximalist stimulation, daylight is the opposite. It's minimalist computing and minimal stimulation. And choose your Anna.
So Jack Cruz, he gave his talk in Prague, and it was a hard-hitting talk, and he used Steve Jobs, Hal Finney, and one other I can't remember, maybe Zuck, as examples of people whose health has slowly declined and suffered over the time that they were interacting with tech. And he was drawing a straight line to that, and with regards to Steve Jobs, and I don't know whether this is even true, but did he not even let his kids use the technology? Is that like verifiable? Do we know that, or is that you're nodding your head?
Oh, this to me is like the original sin of modern computing is Steve Jobs didn't allow his kids until they were 16 to use iPhones or iPads. How does that not tell you everything you need to know?
So they knew.
Yeah.
They knew. Wow.
Well, it goes back, right, Daniel? Like this stuff has been out there like for a long time. EMFs, EMFs, you can go watch like a 60 minutes interview from the 70s about like a tower that was going up in Michigan, Project Sanguine. And they knew that it was a potential risk for sure, but the benefit, the gain was so, the trade-off was so high, right? It was the ROI on computing and technology was inconceivably higher than any potential risk.
So to come back to exposing kids again to all this kind of crap, because what's going on now, a lot of these 5G towers are just appearing on top of schools. And I guess that's because they're municipally owned buildings and they can just put them up there. They don't need to ask any permission. So they choose a school. So they freaking put these 5G towers, and they know, because like we said, back in the 70s and even before that, they were talking about EMFs. You've got 5G towers on schools. You've got kids sitting underneath that, underneath the light, blocked in airless rooms, being force-fed complete indoctrination, surrounded by 29 people that they're forced to spend time with rather than, socially choose who to spend time with. And we wonder why depression is so high, anxiety is so high, obesity is so high, ADHD, Asperger's, autism, whatever it is, it's off the charts. And the more ironic thing, more shameful thing, is that they're putting these 5G towers on top of schools where kids aren't even allowed to use Wi-Fi. It's moronic, and you're exposing kids to all of this kind of shit. Wow. It's dark, guys. It's dark. You can get to a pretty dark place pretty quickly. And this is where people will be like, oh, here we go with the conspiracy theories and whatever else. It's like, this isn't a theory. This has been going on for God knows how long.
It's right there. Look, at the facts of how he didn't allow his children to use. And in a way, I wonder too, if he was to like come back and reincarnate, is that what he would have focused on? He have focused on making computers that were healthy for his kids. So I think that's why some of these folks invested in this, is they do feel guilty. They do feel, and they to your point about incentives and Tristan's point, they're all captured. They don't really know what to do. You can't come out and say, "Hey, we're coming out with the iPad healthy version." Wait, so every iPad we've had before? Well, what? So it's just like society needs a groundswell. And what's so hard is it's so hard to make a new personal computing company. Just it's been a decade since Oculus. There's really nobody else. It's so hard. Computers
Why?
are
What are the barriers? What's stopping anyone coming in and making a new computer company?
well, there's lots of little Chinese companies just making commodity computers. There's a lot of it's when you try to go a little bit off a supply chain and try to do something new, it is so difficult. It's just the complexity of a modern computer we completely take for granted. And so the answer is just it's so complex. And so it's super hard to do. So even for us to launch this is somewhat of a miracle. Resources we had, the team, trying to do something.
So how did you find then the people to make the pieces for you that you need? Because that must have been very difficult, because you completely reshaped something. You must have been looking for ages to find the right factory. And
6 years to get into production. Exactly. I may have talked to over 100 different factories. We were able to convince one to be able to work with us. And then the number of suppliers for each of the controllers, like the fact that we're no flicker, and then to try to deal with direct current, there's a completely new set of controllers that you need, and the people who will work with you. It was really tricky. Yeah, getting the display made, because that's unique. There was only one person, and it took years to convince them to work with us.
And in some cases, are they tied into contracts with like bigger people like Apple, Samsung, whoever, and they're not allowed to like interact with new computer companies? Or
to my knowledge, there was 4 big guys who basically I think had that. So I wouldn't say it's the majority, but there was a couple. It's a lot more banality of evil. I would love to say that they have some like sophisticated plan and they want to. It's just a banality of evil. Like it's so hard to come up with something new, and you need a computer for school or work or this. As long as they keep the status quo going, like they got it. And so society almost just needs new companies who can say, no, we have a total different set of principles. It comes with trade-offs, right? It's black and white, things like that, which there has to be people who know the need is so severe that they're willing to do it. So I think it's just the nature of how innovation diffuses into society. And there's a new paradigm. There's a new paradigm of computing. Computing has never been about humans. It's always been about digital capabilities. So.
All right. So I got a question now about wearables. A lot of people out there with their Fitbit type things. Are these good, bad, indifferent? Are some better than others? Tristan, have you been down this particular rabbit hole yourself? Do you use one? Yeah, let's get filled in.
Okay, so we talked about kids being more susceptible, right? Because they have smaller body size. The number one thing to realize about electromagnetic waves, EMFs, light, which are all the same thing, is that distance matters more than anything. So distance from the source of the EMFs or the light is drastically important, because if you double the distance from the source, you actually reduce the intensity by a factor of 4, because it's a square. So it's called the inverse square law. So I'm not a fan of wearing anything directly on your body. That's why like AirPods, they're low power. Bluetooth is low power. Yes. It is the same frequency as a microwave oven, thousands of times lower power, but it's on your body. It's next to your brain. So for me,
AirPods bad?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like, people argue, but then it's distance and then it's duration. So the fact that an AirPod or wearable will be directly on your body, that's very concerning to me, even if it's very low power. However, the other most important thing to realize is the duration. So you look at all these research studies, a lot of them are only showing harmful effects after chronic duration of exposure. So 24 plus hours, 36 plus hours, 48 plus hours. That's why your sleep at night, getting the Wi-Fi turned off, turning your phone off, and then honestly, just like not holding your phone on in your front pocket, and holding it next to your head. These are all like very simple things that you can do. So going back to wearables, what are you using it for? Is it a Garmin watch? You're training for a marathon and you're wearing it for a couple hours, 90 minutes a day max. Sure, that's probably totally worth it. I would even maybe consider doing that. But are you like basically sleeping in your Apple Watch and your AirPods? They're on, almost 24/7, and it's a toxic threshold, right? So for me, I can tell you every single time I tell people the way they use their phone is the number one source of these, non-native EMFs. It's the highest power. When you're at home, there's no reason to have cellular data on. There's no reason to ever hold your phone next to your brain. Use speakerphone, use headphones. Obviously, wired would be a better option, but to me, that's going to reduce your exposure by a ton. And then, sleep at night, drastically important. Get the phone away from the bedroom, turn the Wi-Fi off. It literally is no effort. You don't need Wi-Fi on at night unless you have some like insane security system or weird dog feeder. But wearables, it's not going to be like the biggest portion of what's breaking the camel's back, but maybe it might be that little extra thing at the end that is. So think about your total exposure and what's like easy to reduce, what's convenient, and what you're not going to negotiate on. I'm not here to sell you anything, but it's kind of like how I explain it to people.
All right, cool. I knew you'd have been down a rabbit hole on those things, so I appreciate that.
For sure.
Anjan, what's the ask of the plebs? What can the people that are listening to this podcast that are interested in what you're doing, how can they help? How can they add value? What is the next step? Will you be looking to hire soon? Is there another investment round? What's the state of play, and what would you ask, from the plebs that are listening?
I think one is if you feel like the product is aligned with your values and you want to support, this kind of new wave of sovereign, healthier computers, is to support by buying the product, telling others about it. That's the only way this works. You can't do this any way that's not based around community. Number two,
just to clarify, I know you said you'd sold out, but so would it be pre-order now that people that just go to the website, pre-order? How much is it? Do you ship worldwide?
We ship to EU, UK, Canada, US. We're gonna slowly open up to other places, and yeah, it'd be putting a deposit right now. And the second thing is we want to do an investment round so we can scale up the team and get more inventory. And then that's when hopefully we can have units again to do pre-orders and people could buy those.
Okay. People can pay in Bitcoin and invest in Bitcoin?
Yep.
Love it.
Yep. Happened before.
And then for those people listening that would have just been, set alight by what you're doing, like Tristan was, when will you be increasing the team, and what kind of roles and positions do you think will open up first?
The main ones are developers, because there's a lot of operating system work we have to do. We want to be able to put, Lightning, eCash, Noster. We want to be able to put those into the OS as how you do identity, how you do payments. And so finding people who understand Android deeply, Android open source project, AOSP, and come from the Bitcoin world. Those would be some of the core folks that we're looking for.
Cool. And when do you think
you can email Anjan, ANJAN @daylightcomputer.com. or hello@daylightcomputer.com.
right.
If you're interested to invest or interested to join the team. And the website's daylightcomputer.com if you want to buy the product.
Cool. All right. Final question. If you had one last orange pill left to give to somebody, who would you give it to and why?
You want to go first, Tristan?
Sure.
I thought you guys were trying to outpause each other for a second. That's going to be the longest pause on the Once Bitten podcast.
Anjan is always going to outpause me. I'm gonna have a controversial statement here and say that, like, let's assume that Trump is going to be the next president. I would give it to him because I actually don't think he's orange pilled right now. I think he's pandering and seeing an opportunity to like market to a crowd of people, and I would love it to be genuine. And for him, like if he got into the office and we actually started buying Bitcoin to eradicate like the debt over a long period of time, that would just be like the craziest thing that ever happens. Like it's almost just like full send, like nobody cares. Like this is just insanity. So yeah, that's my very average answer, but I think it's controversial because people are like all gung-ho about it, and I think he's just pandering to our audience, especially after RFK, like, you know, kind of gave a pretty, you know, commanding speech at Bitcoin 2024. We were there as well. It was an incredible experience. So yeah, that's my response.
You were there? Nice. You get some you get some good exposure to either of those guys?
Not to them, but in general, our booth was swarmed. I mean, so many, the support, and I just want to thank the Bitcoin community, anyone listening to this, like the support has been overwhelmingly positive. I think people just get it. You know, we are trying to be a healthier, more sovereign computing, and we want to bring, like Anjan said, we want to bring this into our OS, Lightning, eCash, Bitcoin, Nostr. Like we have this crazy opportunity to do so and solve some of the barriers to entry to what we all love. And yeah, the response and feedback has been amazing. So it's awesome.
Anjan, last orange pill.
I think in so much as we're trying to change it from the outside, it would be fascinating to orange pill Tim Cook and see what would happen.
That came to my mind too.
Wow.
Because ultimately you have to, I believe deeply that consumers do things because it's the path least resistance. And if you can bake something into the OS, you don't need to go out of your way and download wallets and go through this. You can create seamless user experiences that don't require opting in. It's the basic. And so we are like, okay, I guess we got to make new computers to be able to do that because none of these guys are going to do it. But it is a fascinating thought experiment if those guys would quote unquote do it.
Yeah, sure. Always. Well, Bitcoin, the whole everything about Bitcoin is a fascinating thought experiment. Just going down the 0 point energy rabbit hole. I don't know if you guys have been seeing that one surface. Ashton Forbes and yeah, have you seen any of that? No. Okay. Well, I'll be doing a podcast with him coming up mid-September, but he's already been on Kayvan Devani's show and Corey Tusek's show as well. Yeah, and that's an incredible rabbit hole to go down and think about 0 point energy and yeah, how did that, if he can actually harness power from the ether, what does that do to Bitcoin mining? What does that do to the Bitcoin network? What does that do to the hash rate? So much going on out there, and what you guys are doing is really crucial, very important. As a parent, I'd like to say thank you very much for thinking along these lines, and I'm definitely going to be placing an order for one of these. Should have done it in that first round and had them in their hands already, so I'm already feeling the FOMO. But now I've had you guys on and done the whole conversation, and I hope more people will, get across there and check the website out as well.
Thanks for having us. And if you have any leads for us and how we can be more helpful for parents who homeschool their kids, or I want to take their kids' computers and education use into their own hands, that's an area we're most passionate about.
Awesome. Absolutely. Yeah, I'll have a think, and we can have many more discussions offline, and look forward to meeting you guys one day in person. Are you heading Europe anytime soon, or are you mainly over in the US?
Travel is definitely calmed down for the year. So we'll
Right.
Maybe 2025 for sure.
Get across to BTC Prague. That'll be the one for you guys to come to. It's a great event. All right, guys. Well, we'll shut it down. Thank you for your time. I'm glad we finally got this one put together. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Daniel.